So I don't know if this will ever be posted, but there's a campaign going on right now, and today is March 6, 2015. It's called Dear Me, and it's basically you're supposed to write a letter to yourself from when you were back to yourself when you were younger. Tell them something. And the problem with like my life is I don't know where the heck or who or what time in my life I would want to send a letter to, because I've had so much happen in my life. Like, I just recently turned 28, and hell, as most people all of a sudden go, really? Like, she's 28? Like, no one freaking believes me, but guess what? I'm 28 years old, and I've been through so much stuff. Ups, a lot of downs in 28 years. When I was a teenager and I just said one of the major things that has now happened in my life, people were like, oh my goodness, you've lived through so much, even just being, 15 at that time. And, when I talk to people nowadays and all that, going, oh, tell me about something on yourself, or like, have you experienced something really, tragic, or, how are you doing, or, and depending on what day it is, depends on truly how I do, because there's good days and bad days. But, like, that's the whole thing, is I don't know what age I would want to write myself a letter to. As a teenager, I went through my parents went through a crappy divorce. My birth father was a complete ass. And, my mom and I got through it. But we got through it because she's an extremely strong woman. And she instilled from day one when I was born, to be a strong woman. Even with my birth father, like, putting her down, for so many years, and my mom not feeling like she was worth anything, she instilled in me that I was worth something. And I always knew that. And I wasn't one of those kids during the divorce that said, oh, it's all my fault. Like, I knew what was going on. I knew what happened. I knew it wasn't me, and I knew it wasn't my mom's fault. It was completely my birth father. And, so I don't know if I'd want to write a letter to myself, telling, myself all that. Like, I've always also been that fat, chubby kid, a little overweight or something like that. And I only really got teased about it when I was in elementary school. I hit junior high, and by that time I had a reputation of, well, yeah, I might be a little chubby, but, I can take care of my own. I played sports, I played soccer, I rode horses, and I had a strength, and I used it to my advantage, where I was bullied, but I bullied back. But my bully back was to try to protect myself. And I only did that like in elementary school. And by the time junior high came around, I had some of my friends from, elementary school. And I was worried about my weight because I wanted to be, skinny and all that. But, like, no one ever told me I was really, like, fat and ugly anymore. And I always was, and it was like, that's what you hear about. And then in high school, and that's in 8th grade is when my parents' divorce started. And in high school, no one ever told me I was fat and ugly, yet I was overweight. But then again, I hung out with an range of kids, or, I guess peers or whatever, other high schoolers and all that. Like, I had classes with the varsity football players. I knew some of the most popular people in school, but then again, I was also part of one of the lowest groups of people, and that was FFA, Future Farmers of America. But we were a family within ourselves. And what was so funny was, even in that group, I was part of the bottom because I didn't do all the things that they did. I wasn't in that in-clique crowd of FFA. But you know what? One of my bestest friends, and still to this day, my bestest, was one of those people. And yeah, we didn't really become that close until senior year, but that's because for the first 2 years of high school, I pretty much kind of kept to myself. I was in a really weird spot because that's when my parents went through the divorce and I was depressed as all hell and all that. But I was in a weird, I had friends all over. And then a lot of my friends were people that were 10 plus years older, or like my mom's age. And that was because my mom and I got into doing Renaissance fairs, and I gained an entire new family. And that whole saying, it takes a village to raise a child, is true. I learned so much from so many people, and I had some of the best people as almost new parents. Like, I lost a father, but there was a man right there at Ren Fair, Steve, no freaking family relation. My mom and him didn't date. He had his own family, his own daughter, but he did Ren Fair and all that stuff, and he took me under his wing, and I all of a sudden had a male figure. I had a dad again. I even called him dad, which to my mom's complete surprisement, because I was so angry at my own birth father that I hated the thought of a male figure. I didn't want one. I threw that away. But that was high school. I don't know if I'd want to write a letter to myself at my 15-year-old self, just as I was coming out of the depression, or even my 13-year-old self when I was dealing with all that. And I think that's part of the problem with almost my life, is things go downhill, and just as they start to pick back up, it goes downhill again. But the thing is, I just keep going. There's no point in stopping, because stopping in that sense is losing. But I've always had that mentality ever since that first huge happening, my parents' divorce. It was just keep going. That's always what I've done, is just keep going. And it's never that, oh, tomorrow's going to be a better day, or things are going to change. It's just that moment of keep going. Now, yeah, I've had those days that I don't want to keep going. I had those days when I was a teenager during that divorce, and I will fully admit it, and I am open to talk about it. I tried to commit suicide 5 times. One of those times, a friend actually stopped me. I was saying goodbye to him, and he came and stopped me. It was like the one time I was the closest to actually ever doing it. I always sat there, and then I couldn't leave my mom at that moment. And that's what normally stopped me, was if I left my mom, what would happen? And I just kept going. And I don't know, I've always had that mentality, so I don't know if I would write Dear Me, at 13, telling them that, you know what, screw what he did, don't waste the time. But if I hadn't been depressed, if I hadn't worked my way through it, I wouldn't have been the person I was then when I worked through it. When I finally told him off with accidentally saying the word shit and ass, and couldn't believe I had just cussed at him over the phone. But I did that for 16? Yeah, between sophomore and junior year. The summer. And the next 2 years of my high school was amazing. It was uphill. And then, things got great. And then just before my 20th birthday, things started to go falling down again. And things kept falling. And I don't know if it has started to pick back up. It has in some ways. I'm not at the very top of the happiness that I could be, but since 20, a lot of crap has happened. The first 4 years were really hard. Screw that, first 5 years. I don't even know by the time I was 26 if things technically were better, because things were still pretty bad. And things kept happening. And things have recently still happened. But I just keep going. And part of that is because of some of the things that have happened when I was 20. And basically, not to, I guess, to clarify, I've had a lot of deaths. I've had so many friends, family, pass away in my 20s that people have no idea how I'm still here. And I completely understand that. I know, and I've been told by so many people that they would have just curled up and stopped. And I'm not saying I never had those days, but I knew that I had to just keep going. And it is. It's been the mentality I've had since I was 13 when that first thing happened. You know, just keep going. And today might be good and tomorrow might be shit, or, you know, you have a good week and then you have a bad day, or you know, and things do. And I can't ever say that things get better, but it definitely a lot of times doesn't get worse. Of course I say this, and what's going to be so stupid is in the next year, something is going to pull me down again as far as I've been. And at that point, things have gotten worse. But that whole Dear Me, I don't know if I'd ever actually write a letter to my younger self. I knew when I was a little bit younger, like actually about 20, I was like, I totally know exactly what I would write my 13-year-old self. Exactly what I would say to get me through that depression even more. But I'm also the person that I can tell you about how to kind of work forward. But I'm the one that can't take, I'm not going to say can't take it, because I'll listen, I'll hear it. But at the same time, I know what works for me. And sometimes it's better, sometimes what I want isn't what people are saying I should do. And I think that's the most important thing, is no matter what, who you are, whatever point in life you are, dear me and dear you, be who you are and stay true. Do what makes you happy and what you think is right for you. I have always put people first. What stopped me from killing myself was my mom. What stopped me from doing a whole bunch of other things when I lost people was, how is this going to affect somebody else if something happens to me? But at the same time, it was that moment of still staying true to myself. I knew that I had to keep going. And I guess that's what I would just always tell myself. Dear me of whatever age, just keep going. Something will have to change.